Hello everyone and welcome to Qdabra's free training. My name is Jimmy Risch, one of the developers on FormsViewer, and I will be presenting this topic today. And in this video I would like to give you a short walkthrough of the steps involved in querying JSON-based web services from FormsViewer and a sneak preview of a soon-to-be released feature that helps with doing this. So many of you may already be aware that FormsViewer has great functionality that allows you to query JSON-based web services from your InfoPath forms. JSON services are very popular these days. A lot of online websites are using web services that are based on JSON. And of course, InfoPath forms by default don't have the ability to query these services, but we've included functionality in qRules and in FormsViewer that allows you to do this. So the slide up on my screen just gives a simple overview of the steps involved in doing this. So as we all know, InfoPath is heavily based on XML and XML data sources. So in order to get the JSON you need to make the request to the web service, you first need to convert some of the XML in your form into JSON so that you can send that to the web service. Once you've got that, you can make your request to the service, and that'll usually give you some JSON back. So once you've got that JSON in the response, you would want to convert that back into XML so that you can access it in your data sources. So let's have a look at how that works. So for this demo, I'm going to be showing how you can use FormsViewer to query Zendesk. Zendesk has very rich web services, all based on JSON, that you can query from FormsViewer. And let's look at how that works. So first of all, let's have a look at our brand new Exon JSML converter tool. So in order to get to this tool, you'll need to go into the diagnostics page of any of your templates in FormsViewer. The tool is not actually tied to any particular template, so you can just go there from any templates. I've picked my Zendesk sample that I used in preparation for this demo. So once you've opened up the diagnostics, you'll go to the qRules in Form tab and click Manage qRules. This will take you to the qRules utility page where you've got these tabs here. So I want to go to the JSON XML Builder tab. So the idea here is that I need to prepare an XML structure that I can use in my form, where I can represent the input values for the service and represent the result values so that I can convert to and from JSON and interact with those fields from my form. So over here in Notepad++, I've prepared a couple of values. Here is the JSON that you can use to create a ticket, a support ticket in Zendesk. The tickets accept a whole bunch of other values as well, but the two basic values that you'll need for submitting any ticket would be subject and body. It won't accept them without these. So I've pasted in my structure, and I can click here, Convert, and this will give me an XML structure that matches the JSON. So we can see here that we have a ticket on the outside matching this ticket up here. We have a comment matching this comment, and within that there's a body, and subject matches this subject. And you might notice that the comment and subject order are switched. The reason for this is that the order of properties within a certain hierarchy of JSON are not actually important. They can come in any order and still have the same meaning. So when we're doing this conversion, through the internal processes, it eventually results in them coming out in alphabetical order, but this isn't really a problem. You can just use them like this. Okay, so just like that, we already have the structure for our input XML. Now let's switch over to this tab, and oh, no, not that. That will just switch the top and bottom fields. What we want is the test request utility here. Okay, so what this is going to allow us to do is actually run the same logic that FormsViewer would use to execute the query against the service, and then get a result so we can look at what that result's going to look like. So over here, I've prepared the URL for actually accessing the JSON, the tickets service in my Zendesk. And since I'm going to be creating a ticket or posting one to the system, it's going to be a post request. All of this is, at least for Zendesk, they have very extensive documentation pages on how their services work. For content type, it's going to be application/JSON. We also provide a couple of other options for that, but typically you're going to want to use this one. And the content, here's our content. So, and we're all set to go. You can see here that if you wanted to specify credentials, you can do that. I don't actually need to do this because I've stored the credentials in FormsViewer already using the API token that Zendesk has provided me. The ability to use these stored credentials when making these requests is actually something we've added recently and has not been released yet, but that will be released along with this tool within the next few weeks or month or so. So basically, I don't need to specify credentials because they're stored inside. So I'm going to go ahead and click Execute Request, and what should happen is that this is going to fail. And indeed it did. We got some JSON back saying that description cannot be blank. So it's a validation error from Zendesk telling me I can't have these fields blank. So let's fill in some values. I'm going to say this tool is too much fun. And for the body, I'll say I can't stop using it. Okay, there we go. So we've got some sample values that we can send to the service. We'll hit Execute Request. And that time it worked. We got a whole bunch of JSON back. So this is an actual response from the Zendesk service. And so what I'm going to need to do with this response is convert that into XML so that I can represent this structure within my Forms data source. Okay, so I just click Convert there, and I've already got my XML. So now we've got the XML for the input and the output. The next thing we need to do is build up an XML file that we can use within our form. So the structure for this XML file is pretty much freeform, whatever makes sense for you. In my case, I'm going to start with a Zendesk element on the outside and close it. And let's say I wanted to be able to support various different types of accesses to Zendesk. So I'm going to have a create ticket section here. And let's go ahead and save this file out right now. We'll call this Zendesk request.xml, which will give us some nice formatting and highlighting here and colors. Okay, so in order to make my ticket, I'm going to need a request element to hold the request and a response to hold the response. And again, this can be called whatever you want to call them, but it generally tends to make sense to call them request and response. And to each of these, I'm also going to add a JSON attribute. And the purpose of these is that I need a place to temporarily store my JSON store the request JSON right before I make the request, and store the JSON that I get back from the request so that I can convert it into XML. So these are just some holding places for that JSON. So I'm going to switch back to my tool and go over here, and the request XML looks like this. Okay, and the response XML going to look like this. Going to put that here inside the response. And here in Notepad++, if you've got the XML plugin installed, you can just press Control-Shift-Alt-B and it'll format your XML file nicely for you. Okay, so there is my XML structure, and I've got, because this is saved as an XML file, I got some expand collapse stuff here. So what you might notice is that because this is the request from an actual response to the service, it's got values in it. So I don't actually want to have values in the fields I'm going to use within my form. So I'm just going to go ahead here and clear out some of these fields. I'm not going to need all of them, so I'll leave some of them with values because they're not going to hurt anything. But I guess basically I'm just going to use the created at field, which is a date field, as a confirmation that the request actually succeeded. Okay, so I've got my file, I've got my XML structure. It's time to start putting my template together. So I'm going to open up my qRules blank template here. Okay, so this is just an empty template that I've pre-injected with qRules. So I've got qRules ready to go. We're going to call this Zendesk ticket submission. Maybe make this a little wider here. Okay, and I need to import that XML file we created. So we're going to go to our data connections, click add. This is going to be receive XML document. And so I'm going to add that file to my resource files here. I'm going to come in this folder. Okay, Zendesk request. Click OK, next, and next. All right, so I've got my data source. So we can go in here and look at the structure in the fields pane. One thing you'll probably notice right away as I expand down here, we've got a ticket element in both the request and the response. Because I send a ticket to the service, I get a ticket back from the service, which is, it basically sends me all the values in the ticket to show me what exactly was created. And if I expand these, what I'm going to see is that they both have this whole big list of fields. And this could be a little bit misleading because the actual file only has, in the request section, it only has these few groups and fields: the comment, body, subject. So even though it shows all of these, the only ones that are actually here are those. And if I tried to assign a value to anything else here, it wouldn't actually have a value. So that's just something to be aware of. Infopath is basically figuring out the least common denominator, or the greatest common factor between these, and basically showing anything that it would expect to be inside a ticket. So with that said, let's go ahead and use the fields that we actually know do exist. So we're going to have a body field for the body of the request. Let's go ahead and make that multi-line. Actually, that's going to make it read-only because this is a secondary data source. So I'm just going to leave that as a single line. And let's see, subject. I know it's in here somewhere. There it is. Okay. So we've got our subject and our body. And going to have a button for actually carrying out the request. We'll call this create ticket. Okay, and as I said, to confirm that the request actually succeeded, I'm going to take this created at field from the response section and show that to confirm that it was actually created at the current date and time. And while we're at it, let's also take some qRules debugging stuff in here just so we can see what's going on. I'm going to drag the execution history in and I'll tidy it up a little bit. Okay. All right, there we go. Okay, so we've got our controls laid out. Now it's time to start adding some logic to the form. So I'm going to save this. We'll call it Zendesk Tickets. Okay. All right. So going back to my slide, we can see that the first thing we need to do is convert XML to JSON. So let's start looking into that. So I'm going to go back to Manage Templates because I've just saved out my template and I want to upload it to FormsViewer. So here we are. I'm just going to drag this in here. Name is automatically populated, and I'm going to go ahead and upload that. Okay, so now I'm going to go through the same steps I went through earlier to get to the qRules utility page. So I'm going to go to Diagnostics, and qRules Inform, and Manage qRules. And this time we've already built our XML structure, so we don't need to use the XML builder again. What we want now is this command builder to build our commands. So the first thing we need is to convert XML to JSON. So very appropriately, we have an XML to JSON command for that. Okay, so I picked my command, and it's only got a couple of different parameters, so I want to pick the right values for them. So for the data source name, what I want to do is take some XML from my Zendesk request data source and convert that into JSON. So I'm going to pick Zendesk request there. And the place in the data source that I want to convert is my request. So I'm going to pick that request group. All right, so I've picked the two parameters. I've got my command already built, and I'll copy it to the clipboard. Then over here in the form, I'm going to add a rule. Convert request JSON, and I'm going to run a qRules command, and it's that command I just built. Okay, so what that command is going to do is it's going to convert and spit out some JSON in the result field in qRules. We can see result field right here. So I don't want to have that there when I'm trying to execute my next qRules command. So I want to copy that out to a temporary location to store it. So I'm going to go ahead and go in here. I want to set this JSON attribute that I've prepared as a place to store that value. And I'm just going to copy the result field in there. Okay, so with two simple rule actions, we've set up the logic to convert our XML into JSON. Next thing we need to do is to carry out the actual request. As we can see here, next step is to make request. And as you might guess, the name of the command for doing that is make request. Okay, so this command has a few more parameters than the other one, but we're not going to use all of them. So the main ones we need are the path. The path here is the path where the request should be sent. So that's this URL that I have let's see. Yes, this URL here. Okay. So I've got my path. Username and password, as I explained a little earlier, these are actually stored within FormsViewer. You can indicate them explicitly in the command if you want, but it's a little more secure to have them stored so that anyone who just opens up and looks at your form can't see them. Method is, again, going to be post, and content type is application./JSON. And so the content is going to be that JSON value that I've prepared. And so this isn't going to be a fixed value, of course. It'll change based on the input values. So what I want to do is make this dynamic so I can take it from a field. So when I pick dynamic, I get a field selection button over here that I can use. And I'm just going to take it from that JSON field there. There we go. Okay, so we don't need any headers, so we don't need any of these remaining parameters, and our command's all set to go. And so I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. So we can see here, before I switch back to info path, that the command is now surrounded by a concat function. The reason for that is that we're using a dynamic parameter, so it needs to concatenate in the value of that field. So that's what's going on here, is that we have a concat function including that field value. Okay, so let's add another rule. We'll call this execute request. And again, we're going to execute a qRules command. And because that is a formula, not a fixed value, I'm going to need to put it here in the function, the formula editor. Okay, there we go. And as with the previous command, what this is going to do is it's going to execute the request, it's going to get the result back, and whatever result it gets back, it's going to put in the qRules result field. So again, I want to just copy that out of that field and put it in a temporary location where I can access it. So I'm going to put that here in the response JSON field that I've prepared. Okay, that's the Qdabra rules result field. All right, and that's it for making the request. I make the request and then just copy the result. So we finished steps 1 and 2. We're on to step 3. Convert the JSON to XML. So back to our qRules builder, and we're going to use the JSON to XML command. This one has 3 parameters. So, and because you may have noticed when I was setting up the XML to JSON command that I picked this data source first. The reason I'm doing that is that this XPath parameter is actually associated with this data source. So it's going to show me a field selector based on the data source I pick. So the first thing I'm going to do is pick Zendesk request, and that is indicating the data source where I want to put the converted XML. So it says name of the data source where the converted JSON should be inserted. The JSON converted XML is going to be put there. So once I've selected that, I can pick the actual XPath for where I want to put that. Okay, and that's going to be here. Actually, it's going to be here in the response. Okay, and the JSON. So again, the JSON value is going to be dynamic. It'll be the value that I've stored in a field in the form. So I'm going to use the dynamic option here and pick that JSON. Okay. All right. So there we have it. We've got all our parameters set up. Copy it to the clipboard. And here again, because we're including a dynamic parameter, this is going to be a formula, and we're going to use the formula editor to set up that action. So we'll say convert response to XML. We're going to use a qRules command. Okay. All right, so this is going to convert that JSON and put the result XML in the indicated location. So this JSON XML command doesn't actually put anything in the result field. There's no result there that we're going to need to use. So all we need to do is run this command. All right, so we've set up steps 1, 2, and 3 for my bullets. Let's try out the form. So I'm just going to save that. Make sure that all the changes are saved out, and then come back here to Manage Templates. I'm going to drag in my form, update, and there we go. And so here's our form. We've got our fields, we've got our button. Let's try it out. So let's say printer exploded, ink everywhere. All right, create ticket. And there we go. We see the XML to JSON command converts the XML to some JSON. The make request carries out the request and gets some JSON back, and then the JSON to XML converts that into XML, and we can see indeed that my created at field is populated as 5:13 p.m. UTC time. And we can come over here and refresh my tickets. And there we go. There's my printer exploded ticket submitted less than a minute ago. And there we go. So this has been a short demo of how you can use FormsViewer to interact with XML data sources from your form. With JSON data sources from your InfoPath forms. We hope that all of you come up with some great ways to make use of this feature, and just let us know what you come up with. Bye for now.